So let's go ahead and get started. Today's January 6th. Welcome to the Planning Commission meeting. And let's go ahead and start off with Pledge of Allegiance. If I could have everybody please stand. And repeat the Pledge of Allegiance after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have kind of a light of agenda today. We will go ahead and continue reviewing the minutes to our next meeting. If I can encourage the commission to make sure that we review all those prior to the minutes, prior to the next meeting. There'll be quite a few to review. So if we can set aside some time to make sure that anything that needs to be adjusted on those can be adjusted, and we'll work on those in our next meeting.
Do we need to make a formal motion to continue this? Okay. Kim says we do.
Yes.
So I'll make a motion that we continue the review of the minutes from October 7th, 13th, November 4th, and December 2nd.
We have a motion.
I'll second the motion.
We have a second. There we go. We're all official and legal now.
Thank you.
Excellent. So thanks for Kim for keeping us out of trouble. And then let's go ahead and go to our first item on the agenda tonight, which is a conditional use permit from the Beehive Homes. And we'll go ahead and let Mr. Anderson tell us what we need to know.
I'll let you guys read this. John Little, our building official, put it together. He's looking for some clarification on the parking.
Do we have copies of the minutes for this? Because I think this was pretty, I think it was addressed pretty well. I remember we had a huge discussion about how many could fit in the parking lot and how many on the side, and I think if we go back to our minutes, it should address this question.
So John Little is who again, Dave?
Well, I thought that they were adding some concrete and, you know.
He's questioning.
Well, I'm not terribly familiar with all of John's concerns, but I understand that one thing that we didn't talk about as staff when we reviewed the project, therefore I don't think we talked with you guys about it, is the need for ADA parking space. Or simply that this company is taking up twice the space, the typical space to have a van accessible ADA space. So as John read through the comments from the different meetings where the project was discussed, he concluded that the idea was that there were 6 spaces available.
I don't think they can hear you.
John concluded just from what he read that there were 6 spaces available. Did we find those minutes? Can we get the draft ones? Let's just use the draft. I can probably read something like to it. So the question is, from John's perspective, did the commission want to see 6 spaces, which as I understand it, the applicant can provide, but that would require some additional concrete? Or would you be satisfied with less than 6?
In the meeting, what did we say in the meeting? Was it 6 in the meeting?
I thought it was at least 5. I think it was 3 on the RV side
The
and then 2.
minutes that you guys have from the DRC meeting, at least, that clearly reflects the idea that there were 6. So that was my understanding as we looked at it, that one way or another.
Is that what you remember?
Sure, go ahead.
So the initial meeting, it was brought up, I had enough space across there for 4 9-foot spaces, 36 feet.
36 feet.
Several times that was doubted by a bigger vehicle. I think you said it was really 3, not 4. But I had 36 feet across there. And so after John saw it and he felt as though, I really didn't come away with, and I think that's a clarification, with a certain amount needed, rather what was there was sufficient, was kind of the takeaway that I got, and I've DVR'd it, and that's still what I get from it. But now that I've got to do a van accessible space, it eats up almost two places. So instead of having 4 9-foot spaces, I end up with 3, including a big 11-foot van accessible, plus the 5-foot hard surface unload zone. So I really get 3 across the front, and still the 2 tandem, total of 5. And so at one point I said I had 6 because I had 6, but not counting the accessible space. And so John was concerned that I wasn't following your suggestions and going with 6. No one ever said anything about 6 in the notes, or except for me. I'm the one that brought that up. And so now it's at a point, do we add on a bunch of concrete and end up with a 40-foot drive area, or do we deal with the 3 spaces in the front?
So when we talked about it, we didn't mention spaces by number because it was just represented, this is what you had, and we looked at it and said, okay, but we didn't specifically say, okay, this means we have 6 spaces.
Right.
Gotcha.
More that what I had was sufficient.
And the issue isn't the
A lot of
6
numbers.
spaces so much as that now that you need to have an accessible stall, which requires another 8 feet in essence for an access aisle.
That's right. That's right. And I've put a couple sketches together if you'd like to see them. I'm happy to show you those because and to just show the 2 options that we could go with.
Sure seems in the minutes that we discussed 6, because we sat there and counted them out, because I know you had an opinion. I know Dave was saying, well, are you based on compact cars, you're basing on vehicles? I mean, it seems like we had a discussion about how many would fit in that driveway.
Yeah, we went up there as well. We visited the site.
Visited, but there's nothing in the notes. Can anybody that says a
Well-
number?
They were inadvertently deleted, and I've done the first half of the draft,
Huh.
and I haven't been able to get to the second
Okay,
half.
so we just need to clarify then.
It bounced between 5 and 6 quite a bit in the discussion. 5 was stated a few times, even Dave stated 5, Brad stated 5, I said 6. So ultimately, there wasn't, like I say, ultimately, I came away with that whatever it was sufficient.
I even remember somewhat of a discussion about might have to remove the trash cans and that on the side and move your employees parking all the way up, and you might have to play musical chairs when people leave, but, you know, in order to move them all the way up on the side of the house and leave the driveway for people coming and going and have your,
Yeah, there's no
Employees on
problem
the
with
side.
the tandem space there. It was more or less, is the commission okay with me with a total of 5 spaces, 3 being across the front? Or does the commission want me to add concrete, further eating up my landscaping, and have a 40-foot approach? Or is 3 spaces sufficient?
it just seems like we've already kind of stretched the requirements for this, and now we're gonna stretch it even more. What's the ratio requirement again, Dave, for number of occupancies versus parking? What's the requirement?
John and I read it, following our code explicitly uses 7 spaces.
And
But at the same, also, I mean, I think that was clearly discussed in the planning commission meeting. I clearly remember the planning commission approving it less than that.
I do agree with that, yes. I agree with that that's why I said that's what I mean by stretched it. We already stretched it.
Do you want there to be 5 or do you want there to be 6? I really think that's the question that's before you guys tonight.
So what's I mean, when you look at the cost benefit, what's the financial burden to put the extra? When you say there's more cement and a long driveway, I'm trying to visualize the place. You're talking about
It's on the second sheet.
Yeah, I've got the 2 options there that show
Second
the,
sheet shows him extending the driveway parallel with the street and
So I'm not as concerned about the financial burden as I am eating up my landscaping and having a 40-foot approach, which I think there's an ordinance. Dave, isn't there an ordinance that won't allow me to have a 40-foot approach?
And there's an ordinance that says you need 7.2 parking spaces, so.
Conditional use. So I don't know what would happen with my approach, if I had to extend that, and I purposely put a dimension on that landscaping, because I just wanted you to see
1, 2, 3,
how much is this gonna eat out of the front yard and really create a hardscape that,
Saves water.
yeah, it saves water.
Which I know this is something that Commissioner Fallon deals with regularly, so he can validate
So
how
it-
accessible spaces.
Is that like a 10-foot
There we go.
extension to the driveway? How much is that? Does it say?
I think it's
Oh, 5 feet or?
approximately 9 feet. Or is it 8? 8 or 9 feet would be the extension into,
And then that would give you 6 spaces,
right?
right?
Good shot of it there, of what's there now.
Yeah.
You'd have to add it.
So, yeah, right here, we'd be adding concrete right here. This approach would need to be cut and extended, making a, you'd have to look at the dimensions, I think it's be 40 some odd foot approach.
So you wouldn't have to
You
cut it.
wouldn't do that because it'd just be the ADA.
That's right. Yeah, you wouldn't have to cut
The
it.
approach width would not increase.
Possibly, I'm gonna add 8 feet here, and
It's
so
just the apron for
at
the
least 3
ADA.
feet more approach. And then this approach is here now, I'm gonna extend it already to here to accommodate this drive.
Just to be clear, that's not something that we would expect to see here. We would not expect the approach width to change. It would just be a matter of adding the apron for the ADA.
Right.
From the sidewalk.
Why do you have to,
Not-
why
You
do
don't
you have
have
to add
to,
another?
I just want-
straight in.
I wanna have ease of parking, but, I mean, I guess I'm open to that, I want my patrons and residents to be able to not come on an angle and hit this,
Yeah.
and come on an angle and hit this, I'd
Well,
like
if
that to
you've
be a
got,
little
I
bit
mean,
more
if you've got
flowing.
36 feet at 9 foot per stall, because the way the building code reads is you can have each stall be 9 feet and then the access aisle be 8 feet. So that would still, so instead of being the 5 foot width that you have here, if you make the access aisle the full 8 foot width and have a 9 foot parking stall, that meets the ADA or the code
Okay,
for that as well.
I thought
That
it
makes
needed,
sense.
yeah, I thought it was 11 and 5.
It's a total width, overall width, and so if you had the option of either going a 5 foot access aisle or an 8 foot access aisle. So,
Either way, we eat up the same amount, but I see what you're saying
Yeah.
there, so that may ease that turning radius you're thinking.
Well, then you're only adding 5 feet though on the side here.
well, I still have to add 8.
I need 8, yeah, I still need a total of 8.
There you go.
So I'm open to the commission, I'm worried about, I mean, you all have seen this, look at all this concrete, I don't wanna, this is what I'm gonna end up looking like right here. And it's just it's not what I wanted to have there.
Is there any safety issue with it? Does it make it more or less safe to have the extra space?
In my view, it's more, impact on the neighborhood and street and safety.
So it would decrease the on-street parking and stuff like that a little bit?
That's the idea, is that you're using less of that, more on site.
We did hear from the neighbors, didn't we? the first
Yeah.
time?
This is a hard one for me because I guess have a soft spot in my beat for the Beehive House but I'm not in favor of adding concrete, so to be honest with you, it's a tough one for me. I would almost be more inclined to add concrete down here and add 2 more stalls down the side of your house here than to do it out here. Yes, it's be a pain to be moving cars in and out of there, but it's less impactful on the neighborhood, and we already had quite a few people here that were concerned and upset, and we already made a provision per se. I know that we don't legally like to use that word provision, but we allowed it to happen. And now to come back and ask for more, I'm uncomfortable with it, to be honest. I don't know what other people's feelings are on the board here.
This front page, this purple page, is that what you've got right now?
Yes. That's what I could give with 3 spaces including the accessory, van accessory space.
And that would that require any concrete in this view? So,
That's
but it
status
would
quo.
take us to say, we're okay with 5 instead of 6. That's what it would take to live with this front one and not do anything.
Yeah, if that's a big deal, that's all we need is that direction.
We do that? Is that bending the rules when it specs out at 7.4 or whatever?
Frankly,
I like that if we can.
Practice, but it happened, and the applicants proceeded on that expectation, and we as staff certainly are ready to follow your direction.
Question for you. How often do you find all of these stalls to be occupied? Meaning,
Never.
do you not designate this far west corner
On a
here?
Sunday, now and again on a Sunday.
So if you designate this right here as your disabled parking, and wheelchair accessible or whatever it needs to be, then you leave this middle stall empty, and you say if you're expecting guests with wheelchair, then, or
Doesn't meet the code.
doesn't meet the code?
You have to have a
Well, I can do,
designated access
I can do
aisle.
dual ADAs with a 5-foot strip down the middle.
Yeah.
I will just mention, Brad, that in the ordinance, it does read if you have less than 13 beds, there is no outline, there is no ordinance for parking. It's set right here. So when you say, are we getting outside of the ordinance? We're really not, because the ordinance is set for 13-plus rooms. And it's spelled out that way in the ordinance, and I'm purposely less than that, so that that decision can be made here. So I don't think you're going into a gray area there.
Just to be clear, not to make an argument where we don't need to argue, that's not the case. We don't have any land use in the city where there's not a parking requirement for it. Not seeing it.
Am I misreading the ordinance?
Yeah, you are.
Maybe we should read it, pull it up and look at it then.
Happy to. In fact, John, you guys can look at, the third page that he's provided, where it says, where it references how many parking spaces are required for a facility like this.
There's one,
4 per space plus 1 per employee at the highest shift. That's an analysis that John did on his own. And as I and the city attorney have done the same analysis, that's how we read the code. So there are 3 separate, people on staff that all look at the same.
Well, further in that same paragraph is when it talks about more than 13 rooms. Is that is it still in this, or did you leave that out? Okay, so you didn't put the whole ordinance in here for them to see, or?
They certainly have access to it, we can pull that up too.
That's the way I saw the ordinance. So it's obviously you guys don't have the whole ordinance.
Well, and I think there's a gray line too, I mean, maybe it's a gray line between, private single-home dwelling versus, a business too.
Well, yeah, but it's in the assisted living category. So I'll go with what you guys want to go. I think we're all on the same page. My biggest concern is just eating up that landscaping. It's not a big financial burden to me. I'll be like this, and I know y'all have seen the space up there. It's very residential. That's what we want. It's a place just like home, and we hope to have that continue with that feel. And that look for the neighborhood.
So let's just,
Well,
what's
my
everybody's
view is,
feelings?
In a lot of instances, you wanna, if there's a serious financial burden or another burden, that would, maybe lead this group to say, well, let's just not make it a requirement. Sounds like it's not that big a deal. The biggest concern is the aesthetic look of the landscaping. I think, personally, having that extra space would, give a little more parking, maybe make the neighbors feel a little better. It's not really, to me, it's kind of a toss-up. I would say let's go ahead and have the extra space, but that's just because
Number
it's
5.
not, doesn't seem to be a big, burden for you.
Yeah, I don't have deep pockets. There's gonna be an expense there, and I wanna do what's right. I just hate the idea of having so much hard surface in the front of this home. I don't think it's conducive with the neighborhood, and
As I can see.
I know that we went through the parking analysis last time. I think you pulled up all the other cities and saw that Spanish Fork was one of the more stringent ratios in the county, even more than Provo, twice what Payson is for parking per bed.
Well, we're twice as good. In our own minds, maybe.
What are your thoughts, Brad?
My thoughts are that we try to find a balance here a little bit that makes sense. And the concern I have is what the neighbors thought on the certain days. Generally, there's hardly any need for parking there except on Sundays and holidays, as I recall. And then those times, there were a few complaints that they had some parking on the street. And so where we've given you permission to go ahead and reduce the number of parking spaces you would need, and that's debatable, I guess, a little bit on what the ordinance actually says. But I'm thinking to satisfy the neighbors, I'd probably go along with what Jens is thinking down there, to go ahead and add that apron, add a little more footage so that the neighbors can see that we're trying to not just roll over them, but do something that would be more pleasing to them. And, you know, so that would be my feeling.
The tandem spaces has really brought a lot of impact down with my employees parking there. Neighbors have come over several times and just mentioned,
That's helped.
appreciated that.
I'm hesitant to reduce the number of stalls.
No more
required,
concrete,
so-
just reduce.
Well, no, I think, you know, I think you have to meet both codes.
So you're
In
thinking,
my mind, you have to meet the 6 that we've already kind of agreed upon.
so you're thinking this?
I do, I think
Okay.
page 2 is how I would lean.
I would go this way.
So,
Which way? Where are you leaning?
We're,
Page 2.
we're looking at page 2, adding that
8 feet of
8 feet of
concrete.
concrete.
Any further discussion needs to take place? Anybody ready to make a motion? Want further discussion?
Do we need to make a motion? Is it, I'm not even sure what,
I mean, it's asking for clarification. It's kind of weird. I've never seen the word clarification on our, it's usually either reapprove or approve or
like-
recommend, but
It's almost like we have to say that we,
Motion's helpful.
it's almost like we're
Particularly
amending,
where we're looking for.
we're just amending our previous approval.
yeah, just amend
Sounds
the
like.
prior one to say that we meant to say 6.
Any way you guys want to give clear direction.
So I'll make a motion then that we amend our previous approval, indicating that with the requirement for a van accessible stall and an associated accessible loading zone, that we stick with the 6 parking stalls that were outlined before.
and then do we need to specifically
That would
say
require,
No, I mean, including the, I think I said that we include the accessible
yeah, the van
access
accessible,
aisle.
right.
which is illustrated in his second proposal, I guess.
Yes. Kim, you had a,
Do you want me to tell you what I have for the conditions? Do you want me to include the previous conditions that you guys had spelled out?
I mean, I guess the only thing we're really saying is that we're saying you know, one of the conditions is that it has to meet the building code, and in order to meet the building code, you know, we're saying we're okay with 6 stalls, we don't wanna reduce it to 6 stalls.
And add the loading zone.
And then, but then,
So having a total of 6 parking stalls, including 1 ADA accessible parking stall.
yeah.
That's really the only thing that's triggered this whole conversation.
Yeah.
is that,
The inspector recognizing that we forgot about the ADA apron. Otherwise, it would've been a non-issue.
You should have caught that out of the chute.
Okay, do we have a second on our motion?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second by Jens and a motion by Bruce. And let's go ahead and do a roll call vote, starting with Mr. Wilkinson on the end.
Aye.
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 Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir. All right, so we will turn some time over to Mr. Anderson.
Unless you want to go first.
I don't care, whatever. What do you have for us? Is this our working group stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me go ahead and read a letter first. And then we will break off. So, I've had some concerns as a chairman. I didn't have a chance to consult with my colleagues here, so I addressed it from myself. If you guys feel the same, then we can address it from the committee. But I'm going to go ahead and read an email, or excuse me, a letter that I wrote. And if I could put up a couple illustrations on the screen for the viewing audience, but I wanted to make this a public record. We will email this or mail to WPI and Mr. Mendenhall. So I'm going to go ahead and write this. I wrote my thoughts down. So I'm writing this letter to voice my concerns with WPI and the Woodbury Corporation. You came to us in October and November of 2014, over a year ago, and provided us with a presentation for signs for the Canyon Creek development. During this presentation, you expressed the urgency surrounding these signs and the need for them to be immediately built. Excuse me. This is concerning and rather upsetting to me. During this process, we wanted time to review other city codes for signs, review architectural designs, and make decisions that were best for our community. We rushed through this process and came up with an agreement in order to meet your immediate needs and time frame. Now, a year later, your signs are empty and development is at a crawl. When you presented to us that you had immediate interest and expressed the urgency around our decisions. And I will make note to the illustrations that I have on the screen with blank signs. You see, Mr. Mendenhall, this is not a reflection of you. Citizens of our community and people passing through our community see empty buildings, empty signs, and development not taking place as promised as a reflection of our community, or our city and our community, not your development. This is a reflection of the city, the staff, the planning committee, and the city council. As a chairman, I take great pride in making sure that recommendations we make to city council are the best for our future and our city. Under the current status of the City Creek development, I am bothered that the signs we recommended for approval are blank, providing a poor look for our city and the culture we so embrace and love. I ask that you take immediate steps to utilize these signs as designed and presented to the planning committee and the city council. If you have to lease this advertising space as temporary or reduce costs, then that is better than blank sign towers, as currently presented in a negative fashion. We understand projects take time, but maybe you should not have been much in a hurry to build empty signs. This letter is not written or endorsed by the city, by the staff, the mayor, the city council, rather a letter from me as the chairman expressing my concerns that you did not fulfill your immediate need for these signs as presented. What I have learned from this experience is that the future sign requests will need to have conditions for occupancy of the copy and advertising space to be utilized within a certain time frame to prevent an unattractive empty signs from being displayed in the future of our city. I would appreciate you immediately addressing these empty signs as presented to us originally. So I have many people in the city have approached me, and they don't understand that this is a development, that the developer, they look at these empty signs and what is the city doing about it? Why is this happening? And I sit and talk to them that we had a presentation that we have immediate need. We got to hurry and get these done. I have people ready to sign contracts. Maybe that's our fault. We live and learn, right? But I would challenge if I'm not here and future times we have sign requests, that we put provisions that don't allow empty signs to be built. So I'd like to, whether that goes in our code or now or when we review plans, that I think this is reflection. What bothers me about this more than anything else is this is not a reflection of the developer. This is a reflection of the city, even though we don't have direct control over it. So I'll allow the commission to add to that, or like I say, I wrote this from me. I want to emphasize that I don't want to be getting the mayor or the city council. This is from me and not endorsed by them. And I will be mailing this to him, but I find it offensive that he stood in front of us over a year ago discussing his immediate need, and a year later they're empty. I find that offensive. So.
I've wondered the same thing. Has there been any input we've heard of why there's not been some space filled in on those? Dave, do you know anything?
We have not specifically discussed that with Richard or anybody with Woodbury,
Yeah?
but, I think another thing that I might agree with the chairman about is that it was certainly represented that 2015 was gonna be a really busy year in the development in terms of what was gonna be constructed and occupied. And we did see some things built, a few of the strip buildings on 10th North. But we also saw Walgreens Holt Construction, which surprised everybody. We haven't seen construction proceed on things on the north side of US 6 like was anticipated. So, yeah, I think the absence of having businesses occupying space on the signs is certainly tied to that as well. Just development activity not following the rapid pace that was represented to you in the city council when we talked about this issue. Fortunately, the feedback that I get in talking with retailers and restaurants and others is that I'm pretty confident that eventually development's gonna build out. But it does seem as though the picture that was painted as to the timing of that was overly optimistic. And, you know, there might be other factors as well. I don't know what Woodbury would charge a tenant to occupy space on a sign like this, but I don't believe tenants, you know, automatically get space on these signs for free, just for signing a typical lease. So there's that component also. That's all I have. I mean, I
Yeah.
wish I knew more, but
I mean, I think Culver's and Walmart are the only two people that I've seen that have utilized
exactly, yeah.
these signs.
And frankly, let's be honest, does Walmart need a sign? I mean, Springville is the highest grossing Walmart, or they were, in the whole state. The Springville Walmart is the highest grossing Walmart in the whole state, and there's not one sign there, because Springville doesn't allow it. Springville doesn't allow those signs. They have one 15-footer, 25-footer, okay? Springville doesn't allow it, so, I'm sorry, Walmart has its own draw. I don't know that that sign 50 feet in the air,
Well, we're hopeful, you know, of course, that the signs will be put for the use that we were told they'd be used for, and they'll have the effect that we were told they'd have on increasing commerce in the community. We're still holding out that hope. To be real candid, I appreciate the chairman raising this concern the way that he is, because I know that Woodbury at some point in time is gonna be back asking for more about signs. I mean, you remember when you reviewed these plans that there was discussion about putting digital copy on top of them. At some point in the future, they will be back before this body talking about that, and, you know, maybe this experience will be helpful to reflect back on when that discussion comes along.
and I want to make sure it's clear, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Mr. Mendenhall or the company, but I want to make it perfectly clear that it's upsetting to me, and I think that they led us astray. And I don't know why they're blank. Like I say, there's other places that are there. Is there a price point for these advertising spaces so high that people don't want to do it? Because, I mean, these are blank right outside of many retail areas, and maybe their price is so high that they don't want to fill them. I don't know.
You'd think it'd be a win-win for him, actually, to get spaces on there. It would look like it was a more active development. You put Starbucks and Five Guys up there, and Kneaders, and all of those, it makes it look that much bigger.
It does. It does.
So I'm surprised that they've allowed to not do that. So it'll be interesting to see what his comeback will be.
Is there any other comments on this? No?
Well, I'll just make a quick comment, which is, you know, anytime you work with the developer, you're tied to some of their practices and, you know, their the way they do things, and I guess I'm not really surprised there's a little bit of a slowdown. There may be some factors we don't know about, but, you know, I think, like Dave said, there's a lot of activity going on. I'm pretty optimistic that the development will fill out, and we'll get some, you know, tenants in there. And you know, nobody likes to see the empty spaces. So if there's a way for them to move quickly on that, that'd be great. You know, I'd like to see it as well. I haven't heard too many comments about it, but
I know that-
obviously a good thing to, you know, we need to have communication with them and get some updates maybe and see where they're, you know, where things stand.
Any other comments? Okay, we'll go ahead and turn the time over to Mr. Anderson. Do we want to adjourn to a working group?
However you prefer. Makes it a little bit more casual, but not much.
We have a few things to go over as a group. Do you want to adjourn and then go into the conference room as a working group? Anybody? Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion then to close the planning commission meeting January 6th.
Heading over there.
And then adjourn to a working group session. And anybody make a second on that?
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second, and it is closed.